this. This might be the way that Lance Stroll exits, because Japan and the Middle East might end up with having very deep pockets. And it certainly helps that Honda's boss wants to keep the good times rolling and, oh, is that a Toyota in the distance? I knew it! Watanabe was once politely assertive about Aston's goals, respecting them, but also wanting to have a voice at the table. Now, that voice has gotten even louder. In an interview on the F1 team's official website, Honda's main man laid out the team's future now that Honda has taken charge from Mercedes in terms of the operation, as well as what they are doing elsewhere. It's a very interesting read, but at the same time, if you actually look through the whole document, it actually doubles down on three important things. There's a lot of language surrounding the term one team, as well as obviously the desire to be winning titles almost right off the bat. And not to mention having a long-term project forming with this team, and it being the only operation that they have for a while, and that Adrian Newey is at the heart of it all. And all of the while, understandably, this does clash with the permanence around the second seat of Aston Martin, that being taken up by Lance Stroll. But what it doesn't do, though, I must say right now, is give any hard hint of a takeover or a driver shakeup as of the end of 2025. So all of this stays in the plausible but speculative bucket. I have a spanner for that. Buying out Aston Martin using Aramco money to help you is just one avenue that could be explored here, and let's not forget the kazoo, which Haas is now in the business of manifesting. But anyway, let me read this particular excerpt from Koji Watanabe and share it for your consideration. Ahem. We laughed a lot in the first meeting after Adrian joined Aston Martin Aramco. It was very much a case of, well, here we are again. Of course, in the longer term, the ultimate goal of this partnership and our definition of success is winning the World Championship. It's very important to take a long-term view of this. Our relationship with Aston Martin Aramco is going beyond a technical collaboration. We are sharing a common vision. There is a lot of passion in the team at the AMR Technology Campus, but also a great deal of quality. Pair that with Honda's development skills and ability to provide winning power units, and we have the potential to be the successful in Formula 1. Not just in 2026, but also 27, 28, and beyond. We are on the eve of something very special. Oh, the timing of this is just immense. After what Toyota said last week with Haas, no, this right here is a clapback. No, it's a very polite Japanese declaration of war. They're not going to be just supplying dinky little power units and then calling it a day and then just sticking the Honda badge on the car. Oh, no. They're getting really into bed with this team. What Honda's saying right here is, oh, cute. Oh, look at the cute. Oh, how about a 3.2 billion value team then? This has got to become a juggernaut, whereas you're just a picky little minnow. At least for now, of course. Besides, Honda's gotten rather used to winning things with a driver many describe as the best in the world right now, and sure, they've got a world champion in Alonso to work with, which is pretty cool, someone who's far more diplomatic than they were the last time they worked together. But they've also got Lance, who is, at best, an unknown quantity in a top field car. And in that Aston interview, he frames Honda as an entity that simply can't quit Formula 1. They don't want to leave. And that maybe this incoming regulation cycle could be the golden opportunity for something very special to occur. And they also stated very clear that the idea of having customer operations, as in supplying more than one team, is out of the question, at least for now. At his other comments, which includes that thing about Newey, as well as how F1 can be cruel when he talks about what happens when results are not good enough, that to me sounds like a guy warning everybody that this project is all about titles, not just sharing the vibe with Aston Martin. This is serious business. A cruel business. Overlay this with what's going on with Aston Martin right now as they end their status of being a customer operation. And it's quite obvious that Aston Martin is not a title team. At best, at one point, they were runners-up in the Constructors, but they quickly fell down to earth, and since they became Aston Martin Grand Prix, they have been bouncing around 5th and 7th place in the Constructors, the very definition of a midfield team. And oh, do I remember all of the stuff about Fernando at the beginning of the year, people even using the washed terminology, given that Lance Stroll was scoring all of the points initially. Oh, how things changed, because even amidst all of that, Alonso's early pains at the beginning of the year, he has now been able to outqualify Lance Stroll 36 times in a row. The last time the Canadian outqualified the Spaniard was back at the British Grand Prix last year. And the gap between them, the average in qualifying, this year, about 4/10. You might be thinking, well, that's not too bad. But considering how close the field has been in 2025, where we have seen in places half a second make all the difference between you getting out of Q1 and not getting out of Q1, that is immense. It could be even bigger next year, unless Lance Stroll pulls his socks up. And I know you might be thinking, oh, well, they'll just fix the car to make it better. No. I don't think Honda will be playing by those kind of rules. And then to top it all off, Alonso swung the deficit he had in the points in now having a 23-point advantage, 56 through 33. Lance only dragging himself back into the points at Abu Dhabi after several races outside the top 10. And oh yeah, penalty points? Lance has 6 of them as of now. Fernando, none. Squeaky clean. This is exactly what Watanabe-san was talking about, how F1 can be cruel. And those stats I just shared with you are pretty savage. It's not window dressing, people. These are the facts. He has simply licked Lance Stroll. And also, these numbers are going to tell you about how important the Marque's prestige will be on the Sunday, because if you just get one driver scoring most of the points and the other is near the back in the midfield, what does that say about you? I mean, you could argue that, well, that's kind of what Honda's had to muddle through with the Red Bull second seat curse. So while you've got all of that going on, where Aston Martin's F1 team is seriously looking more and more impressive and more profitable, the road-going division, Aston Martin Lagonda, is absolutely floundering. The share price has cratered in recent times and is still fighting big losses as well as tariff-related problems and falling sales. It's really not looking good. And so to shore up the balance sheet, the car company sold their remaining stake in the Formula One team, whilst Papa Stroll's venture firm increased its stake in the road-going business to around about a third of it. So you've got a weird twin reality thing going on here. And as a result, the Aston Martin brand on the car is no longer genuine. It's not the Ferrari mark that Papa Stroll wants it to be. All it is now, that Aston Martin logo on your car, it's a brand. It's a sponsorship agreement, all atop a privately owned team. And then there's another ingredient to include all of this. Obviously, Gulf money. There are Saudi fingerprints all over this project, and yes, we have heard plenty of language from the Middle East about wanting to invest in Formula One a lot in recent times, including, I remember, moments when they wanted to actually buy the sport outright, but those were all rebuffed. And I know that the Middle East has ventures and tendrils in many other F1 projects, but with Aston Martin, it's the most overt. Aramco is their exclusive title sponsor for the next 3 years. Ma'aden, the Saudi mining giant that is majority state-owned, is a principal partner of the team, with its logo and white motifs reducing the green of Aston even more. Then you've got the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, the PIF, owning nearly a fifth of the car company, and, as some people spotted from filings this year, about 8% of the F1 team, though it could increase its stake if it took up the option to 10%. And Saudi officials, they've made their intent very clear that they love Formula One and they want to have more and more fun with it. That if they couldn't buy out the sport, then they would buy out a Formula One team outright. And right now, Qatar's got a fairly decent share of the Audi Formula One project. Bahrain owns the entirety of McLaren Racing. So, I mean, yeah, they've got to catch up. Yeah, because sponsoring tracks and then maybe making tracks of your own, including the Mario Kart-esque Qiddiya circuit, oh, that's just boring. That's unsatisfying. A Reuters piece this year quotes the Saudi Federation chief saying team ownership is the next step, flagging Aston and Alpine as potential targets, especially with Aston selling shares in the team and the public investment fund already on the table. Though, as we know, Christian Horner is reportedly eyeing Alpine, which, let's be honest, lacks Aston's global iconic appeal. In short, Aston's sexier, so is most likely the one that will be partnering up with Saudi. I understand you're still talking about Papa Stroll ruling all, and he has the power to fend off these parties. You're right to point that out. He is still the controlling shareholder. But around him now, you've got plenty of voices telling him to maybe see sense. You've got an entire country pouring billions and billions of dollars into this project, and they want to be the best. You've now got a works partner, Honda, stating their intent in wanting to continue to win races and go for titles, something they have been privy to since 2019 when their project in Formula One really skyrocketed. And these parties, and Honda's passion, I'm sorry to say it, Papa Stroll, they are considerably richer than you. And yes, you do have to bring in Honda, but for a slightly different reason. They are really thrilled to be working with Adrian Newey again. They are treating it, as Watanabe said, as Honda GP 2.0. They're all in. It's like these two are having fun together. They're like having this really good private conversation. It's like, oh, this is going to be so great. And then Papa Stroll's like, hey guys, what are you talking about? Oh, nothing. And Watanabe's clarity is really rare for Japanese executives. Talking about embedding Aston engineers in their Sakura base, as well as having Honda engineers around Silverstone, as well as their existing Bracknell facility, and using the time zone difference from Japan and the UK to mean that it's a round-the-clock operation. Andy Cowell, now the team's main rep with Honda as chief strategy officer, called the move from Mercedes customer works to being with Honda liberating, as well as the freedom that comes with it to co-design the car and power unit as one. Then you bolt Adrian Newey onto that, because he's been saying a lot since he started work at Aston Martin, and as we all know, he is the managing technical partner, he is a stakeholder in the team himself, so let's not forget that, and also, he has now designated himself as the team principal, and also Adrian's been quite realistic, which has been quite nice to hear, that right now, Aston Martin is in no condition to be courting the likes of Max Verstappen or Charles Leclerc, and I've even seen Oscar Piastri being mentioned a couple of times, but that's neither here or there. The point is, though, this team is not ready to bring elite drivers. They really need to prove themselves on the track, and he's quietly confident that they might have that solution, since he will be attending the private tests taking place around Barcelona that we may or may not be privy to. It'll really depend on who's actually on the ground there. I wish I was. But amidst all of that and what Honda's been saying, they want to become a super team. And a super team requires super people, including 2 super drivers. Which is why Lance Stroll's presence right now seems to be sort of antiquated, outdated, not really in step with where the project really wants to take itself. And that maybe this could lead to a controlled explosion of the Stroll model and maybe the entire end of the Stroll era itself, depending on how they wish to go about things. Now again, I am getting out the spanner for this. But then when you stop to think about it, as I mentioned earlier, Aston Martin has officially sold its stake, the car company, in the Formula 1 project. So step 1, that's already done. And then outside investors are quietly taking chunks of equity away one bit at a time, meaning eventually power shifts could occur when maybe Papa Stroll could be outvoiced with other big equity stakeholders. The next step is 2026 itself. You roll out the first proper Newey Honda car with Alonso and Stroll at the wheel, Honda spending that year proving basic competitiveness under the new rules, whilst Aston learns how to be a works team for the first time, everyone being able to confidently ignore if there is a situation where we get more of the same thing we've seen since 2023, where Alonso is doing most of the heavy lifting, and unless Lance has a remarkably impressive winter training program that turns him into an absolute beast, then I expect this to continue. And then step 3 is when we go into 2027, and by then we'll have a much clearer picture about where this Aston Martin project actually is. The simulator will be much more up to speed, the wind tunnel will be completely bedded in and calibrated properly. We'll have seen Adrian's car in action, and then we'll see the evolution of it. Maybe we might be saying, oh cool, maybe Lance's performance ceiling was higher than we thought, it just needed the right car underneath him. Or maybe it might be just a repeat of, Lance just banging on the ceiling constantly, and we just go like, oh yeah, that's still quite low. And that maybe they might have to make uncomfortable decisions going forward, especially when you consider that next year's drivers market is predicted to be absolutely bonkers. The reason why it wasn't bonkers this year and only Arvid Lindblad's coming in for next year is down to the fact, well, nobody knows where the teams are going to be in 2026. In just a few months' time, we will all know, and the drivers will know, and they will be making phone calls. Well, I mean, their agents will be. There are also reports that Aston Martin has promised sponsors it will have a top-tier star as one of its drivers for 2027, specifically name-checking Charles Leclerc, for example. It all depends on what happens with Alonso. Does he choose to stick to his word that he would retire once he's driven a good car and he can bow out on a decent note? Or does he maybe get tempted with Adrian Newey's success and his work ethic and pull that phrase back and then pull another, my name is Fernando Alonso and I'm here to stay. And amidst all of that, Honda and Verstappen have just finished off an emotional farewell tour. Honda celebrating 72 wins with the team, as well as multiple titles. And then to cap that all off, Verstappen said goodbye for now. And do you recall everyone leaning slightly forward and saying, oh, what did you mean by that, Max? And then, of course, there's the domestic rivalry with Toyota. Like I mentioned earlier, Toyota's starting to do more with Haas, and Honda's starting its stuff with Aston Martin. Next year's gonna be great. We are entering the age of the manufacturer again, folks, but this time, slightly differently. It's gonna be cool. Because with TGR Haas, Toyota's following their messaging about people, product, and pipeline. Exactly like Honda's language about F1 being some kind of training lab. Yeah, Toyota aren't building a power unit, which Honda are, but senior Toyota figures are already talking in public about gradually moving toward a fuller F1 return, so this could all change come 2030 when the earliest evolution of the engine rules could be applied. Then we'll know. It's actually making me feel a little bit nostalgic and going, oh, that takes me back, the Honda-Toyota rivalry in the 2000s. Because on one side, you got Toyota using Haas as some sort of bedding-in ground as well as a brand outlet, and then you got Honda, what they're doing with Aston Martin in wishing to carry on the fun they had with Red Bull, now that it's come to an end. They don't want it to end. And both are linked with huge amounts of capital. The Saudi Arabian Crown Fund, as I mentioned, as well as Aramco, and then Toyota's huge financial heft around the world is also a big note of hand. And then they've got their own little international battle with General Motors, so it's going to be a really busy time of it of Toyota in stepping up their F1 campaigns. So who's to say amidst all of this that the PIF might increase their stake to 10% and maybe then add even more? Honda might get themselves involved as well with some kind of stake, then maybe utilizing Adrian Newey's own stake in the team as extra leverage, and then before he knows it, Papa Stroll might actually be outshouted by other interested parties. If they all collaborate against Papa Stroll and say, look, you gotta get your boy out or else, we might see Papa Stroll acquiesce or decide, you know what, fine, have your stinking team, I'm out! And then he himself will be pocketing several $100 million, either just to swan off into retirement and do his own thing, or use that money to prop up the Aston Martin Lagonda operation, which admittedly is a pretty cool brand to be owning, Lance Stroll. That is really cool that you own Aston Martin. It just means that you won't be controlling the F1 team anymore. And somewhere along that path, Lance's contract will become a very expensive but then negotiable item. He could either retire gracefully at 28 and take up a round of tennis, having ticked the I raced in F1 for a decade and alongside champions box, or maybe he could move into the Aston Martin World Endurance Division, since the Valkyrie is making very solid progress over there, so he could maybe see some success with that operation. So the second seat would go to somebody who could perhaps back up Alonso, or it could be a Verstappen-Leclerc double act. So if that were to happen come 2027 like that, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a name change, that Aston Martin is not front and centre, that it could be Aramco Honda Aston Martin Formula One team. You know, with Adrian Newey in charge, and then maybe being able to tempt Max Verstappen if the Red Bull project turns out to be absolutely a dead duck. And then you got the Toyota subplot with Honda there. It's going to be an arms race, people. They are going to want to outdo the other. Honda is extremely motivated at the moment, and that is astounding. Toyota is extremely motivated. Japanese companies who are motivated are powerful forces. This is great for Formula One if you're a technical nerd and a racing nerd. And commercially speaking, you'll see all these brands who say, hey, I own a Toyota, I own a Honda or an Acura or whatever. I know those brands. Yeah, you'll be really interested in this no matter where you come from. But then you'll be wondering, well, Law, when is this exactly going to happen? When are we going to see Lance Stroll out? Well, in the short term, I think Honda will bite their teeth and hold their tongue and just lump it, because that's the wisest thing to do. It'd be really stupid if they went in all guns blazing and said, hey, get Lance Stroll out for next year. We want someone else in. Lance Stroll will tell them exactly where to stick it. And besides, if that were on the table at the beginning of the negotiations, it wouldn't have got past the first meeting. So it's quite clear that Honda, they are very softly with this. They don't want to anger Papa Stroll. They want to get in there and then have the facts speak for themselves in what they've been able to contribute. Because Watanabe spends a lot of the time in that interview talking about trust, about how it's important to stay united when results are bad. And respecting partners, well, that's in there too. They're not just going to walk in and hurl their sack around telling people what to do. Longer term though, if the car turns out to be good enough to be competing for wins all the time and maybe going for a title by the end of it or next year, then the bargaining power could easily sway Honda's way, and then indirectly Aramco's way, and then indirectly still PIF's way. if we get a situation where Fernando's near the top, consistently so, and Lance is scoring in the bottom half of the top 10, or maybe going out of Q1 more than is comfortable given what the AMR car is meant to be about, then you might start to see Honda's language change. It might be less about trust and understanding when times are bad and saying, this is not really where we're expecting to perform. We need both cars to be working together if we want to hopefully be high in the constructors table. Because as Watanabe said, they can't quit Formula One. They are obsessed with it. They've worked with one of the best drivers in the world, and they want to take what they've learned from that man and put it into practice somewhere else. And if they haven't got two drivers that are on board and are showing continued progress, then it's going to lead to frustration within. So putting their badge on a car where one of the cars is really struggling where it shouldn't be, it's a bad look, and it's just completely going against everything they've grown accustomed to. Now, okay, I must stress this out. This is all theory and conjecture based on sources and quotes. We're interpreting the situation, you and I. And I know that some of you may not like it, but I'm really harking back to my days in history class. I absolutely loved those times when you could evaluate sources from times gone by and see what they were trying to mean, what is inferred in what they said, trying to guess their intentions. What are the intentions in this case of Honda with Aston Martin? They clearly become louder and louder and more fired up. Now especially, they are now on the landing page as Aston Martin Aramco Honda. They don't want to be bumping around 5th and 7th for the rest of their time with them. They want to be up in the top echelon, the front runners. This is a title project. Thusly, based on Watanabe-san's words, it becomes increasingly harder to see Lance Stroll still being at that team by the time we get to, say, 2028. I know that for some of you that's still way too long, but you've really got to be thinking a little bit more pragmatically here. You are not going to see Honda and Aramco pushing Papa Stroll to eject his son right now. They need the evidence to prove that if they want to be serious in winning titles, they are going to need two drivers on their best game. Well, I mean, unless Lance's levels change dramatically, of course. That could happen. Whether the trigger is a full or partial change of control or just brutal performance reality changing the picture, the direction of travel Honda is hinting at is very clear. You don't call F1 cruel just to keep a paid driver in the second seat. And what makes this really fun is that this is all happening at the same time Toyota is deepening its bonds with Haas. So all of this is sounding like a Japanese tug of war right here, with Saudi money paying for the war efforts and the Stroll family now caught in the crossfire. But you right there should not be caught in any crossfire. I am providing you a solution in what to watch next. I think you'll really like this, so I'll see you over there.